cold wind howls across a frozen world. For 2 million years, ice-sculpted continents, storms shaped destiny, and giants walked across a land made of snow and silence. Among these titans stood one creature above all, a symbol of endurance, intelligence, and family, the woolly mammoth born into blizzards, raised in tight-knit herds. Guided by ancient memory and powerful matriarchs, their breath steamed like smoke in the bitter air. Their footsteps carved trails through endless white wilderness, and their tusks, curved like frozen moons, shaped snow, ice, and even history. But this world was not theirs alone. Predators watched from the shadows. Climate shifted like a living beast, and a new rival appeared, humans clever, coordinated, determined. This is a story of survival against nature's greatest extremes, of families held together by instinct and love, and of a final struggle on a warming planet where time began to run out. This is the world of the mammoth, a world lost to ice, but never forgotten. The wind roared across endless tundra, sweeping snow and swirling ghosts across a frozen world. Ice-age clouds hung heavy above plains wrapped in silence, broken only by the deep crunch of massive feet pressing into frost-hardened earth. Towering silhouettes moved through the mist, giants cloaked in thick fur, curved tusks gleaming pale like the moon. These were the mammoths, eternal symbols of a world forged by ice, shaped by struggle, and ruled by resilience. Their presence commanded ancient landscapes, sweeping grasslands stretching from Siberia to North America, where bitter winds cut through valleys and glaciers crowned the horizons. Mammoths were not monsters of an age long past. They were architects of ecosystems, guardians of frozen prairies, sculptors of land through movement and survival. They walked not like beasts but like ancient kings, slow, deliberate, and powerful, their massive bodies clothed in wool thick enough to defy cold that could kill in minutes. Listen closely and the past becomes alive. Herds rumbled across the steppe like thunder moving over earth, their low rumbles echoing through frozen dawns and pale twilight. Mothers nudged calves with long sweeping trunks, their touch gentle despite the strength behind each movement. Older females and matriarchs guided the herd with memory etched into instinct, leading them to ancient water holes that never froze, to valleys where the wind broke softly instead of slicing like knives against skin. Mammoths were not solitary beasts, but creatures of family, loyalty, and memory. Memories spanning lifetimes passed down through generations like living maps of survival. They fed on tough frozen grasses, digging through snow with heavy feet, sweeping aside frost with powerful tusks and trunks. Their breath steamed into the icy air, forming clouds around them like halos of ancient life. Snow clung to their fur, but their thick coats and layers of insulating fat protected them from temperatures that fell lower than the coldest polar nights today. Evolving not just to endure their world but to master it, mammoths thrived where almost nothing else could, symbols of nature's endurance. Around them lived creatures equally adapted to harsh extremes: shaggy musk oxen, massive woolly rhinoceroses, steppe bison scraping frost for roots. Saber-toothed cats watched from ridges, their muscular bodies poised, breath crackling in the cold air. Packs of dire wolves tracked herds, waiting for calves to stray or elders to show weakness. Life here was not gentle but fierce, every breath earned, every day a test of endurance and will. Yet mammoths did not cower before predators. A single swing of tusks could shatter bone, a defensive circle formed by a herd, calves protected beneath bodies taller than any human could ever imagine, was an unbreakable fortress. Even the boldest predators approached with wary caution. To face a mammoth was to face centuries of instinct sharpened by ice and threat. Seasons shifted, winter to deeper winter, where warmth was a brief visitor. Summers came short and wild, transforming frozen ground into vast flowering plains buzzing with insects and bursting with colors unimaginable against white tundra. Mammoths bathed in rivers fed by melting ice, sprayed water over their backs, rolled in mud to cool and coat their skin. Calves trumpeted in play, racing clumsily through grass, stumbling but rising with determination. The skies above filled with birds migrating across continents. Caribou traveled ancient paths. The earth breathed under a world still young, raw and powerful. But change moves slowly like ice-carving mountains, and yet when it comes, it reshapes everything. The great glaciers that sculpted continents began to retreat inch by inch, year by year. The world warmed. Grassland shrank as forests crept north. Rivers shifted, lakes dried or flooded, Animals migrated, seasons lengthened and softened. For creatures like mammoths, built for cold, forged by ice, the world was changing too fast. Though change itself was invisible day to day, humans appeared in their world like fragile shadows, small figures wrapped in fur, holding stone-tipped spears and fire. They watched mammoths not with fear but wonder and hunger. To early humans, a mammoth was life itself: food, warmth, shelter, tools, clothing, even culture and spirit. Cave walls across ancient Europe bear images of mammoths, drawn not as fantasy but as memory. Their bones shaped early homes, tusks carved into art, hides stitched into clothing that turned humans into survivors of ice. Humans followed mammoths with patience, learning their trails, reading tracks in snow, studying wind and movement. A mammoth hunt was not merely violence, it was ritual, necessity, and reverence blended into one. They honored what they hunted, for they understood the world through struggle and gratitude. Yet with each mammoth taken, the balance shifted, a slow toll the giants could not fully see, but one that echoed across years like footsteps fading into snow. Climate continued its march. Forest replaced tundra. Plants mammoths relied upon shrank in range. Herds grew fewer, islanded by shrinking habitat. Hunting grew more precise, weapons sharper, human tribes wiser and more organized. Mammoths fought against time itself, against warming skies and the steady, creeping approach of a world no longer built for them. Still, they endured. On Wrangel Island in the Arctic, the last mammoths lived thousands of years after pyramids rose in Egypt. Small, isolated survivors holding on to the last frozen breath of the Ice Age. They drank from cold streams, walked beaches of ancient shores and called out into empty air where no answering trumpet returned. Silence became their companion, loneliness their last predator. One by one they disappeared, not in roaring extinction but in quiet fading. The final mammoth may have stood on a windy cliff under a gray northern sky, looking over empty plains where its ancestors once marched in thousands. It may have trumpeted into the cold wind, searching for voices long gone. It may have laid down in frozen grass and closed its eyes as a species, ending a chapter of life billions of years in the making, not with cataclysm, but with the soft stillness of time passing, and yet they did not vanish from memory. Humans remembered mammoths as legends, as massive spirits of ice and snow. Their bones slept beneath permafrost for millennia, until curious hands rediscovered them, piecing their story together through tusks, teeth, and frozen bodies preserved so perfectly that fur still shone and stomachs still held last meals of Ice Age grass. Scientists now study them, decode their DNA, dream of bringing them back not as monsters, but as guardians of wild lands frozen in time. Mammoths shaped ecosystems. They turned tundra into grasslands that supported countless species. Today, bringing them back is not just science, but hope, a chance to restore balance and breathe ancient life into a world rapidly changing once again. Because mammoths were not relics, they were proof that life adapts, endures and evolves through everything. They remind us the earth changes whether we see it or not, that climate is a force greater than kingdoms and dynasties, that the world belongs not to the strongest, but to those who adapt. Their memory is not frozen in ice. It walks through the genes of elephants, lives in cold winds that whisper across tundra, echoes in the beating heart of nature itself. They were giants, not just in size but in spirit, symbols of patience, survival, and nature's power. They walked through deep time as guardians of cold worlds, and though they fell to a warming globe and human rise, their legacy whispers through every winter breath, every frozen dawn, every snow-covered field where silence holds ancient stories. And when snow falls quietly on distant plains, and wind carries a deep hollow cry across Arctic ice, sometimes it feels like the mammoths are still there, watching, waiting, remembering. The story of the mammoth world does not end merely with their colossal size or the frozen fate that ultimately claimed them. Their journey across the earth was an intricate tale of migration, ingenuity, adaptation, intelligence, and emotional existence. A saga that shaped Ice Age landscapes and influenced life for thousands of other species, including our own ancestors. As the ice sheets rose and fell, as forests receded and tundra expanded, mammoths marched in rhythm with a planet constantly shifting beneath their feet. They were not solitary giants. They belonged to tight-knit herds built on loyalty and memory, where mothers passed wisdom to daughters, where calves grew under vigilant eyes and where death, loss, and remembrance echoed in the snow. This world was harsh, but mammoths were born into a system built to handle that brutality. Their thick coats held layers of insulating fur, beneath which rested thermal fat pads and skin adapted for cold. Smaller ears and shorter tails minimized heat loss and frostbite, a striking contrast from their modern elephant relatives. Their curved tusks, sometimes spiraling more than 14 feet long, were more than weapons. They were tools of survival. These tusks carved through ice to uncover frozen grasses, snapped branches to clear paths, and enforced discipline within the herd. Their trunks, powerful yet precise, sought out buried roots, yanked bark from trees, lifted calves, and communicated through gentle touches. Their steps shook snow off icy pine boughs, marking paths future generations would follow. In their world, strength was not only in muscle but in memory, instinct, and family. Imagine a herd trudging across a white expanse stretching to the horizon. Snowdrifts swirl around shaggy forms, breath vapor rising like smoke from ancient engines. The matriarch leads, an experienced female who survived many winters, migrations, and predators. Behind her follow mothers, daughters, siblings, and calves pressed close to warmth and protection. Bulls once reaching maturity leave to roam alone or form loose bachelor groups, returning only at certain seasons. Survival depends not on individual power but on social unity. Communication travels through deep rumbles that vibrate beneath the ice, a language felt rather than heard, carrying warnings, comfort, and direction. They sense distances and danger, remembering water sources, ancient trails, and migration routes etched into instinct across millennia. Their world was filled with Ice Age titans, each carved by climate and competition. The mammoth was neither predator nor prey, yet lived in constant tension. Fields of snow were shared with saber-toothed cats whose fangs could tear through thick hide, giant short-faced bears towering over modern grizzlies, packs of dire wolves working with relentless determination, and packs of hyenas far larger and stronger than those of today. Even the wind could be an enemy, stripping warmth, burying food, freezing the unwary. But mammoths held ground through size, intelligence, and numbers. A predator attacking a calf risked being crushed beneath thousands of pounds of fury, tusks swinging like sharpened ivory scythes. Mammoth herds defended their young with organized precision, one step closer to the behavior we see in today's elephants, suggesting deep emotional complexity, empathy, and protective instinct. Food was not simply grazed. It was earned through labor. Winter buried almost everything edible. Mammoths dug deep into snow, scraping frozen earth to reach fragile blades of grass or tough roots hidden beneath frost. In summer, when tundra bloomed briefly, they fed endlessly, storing energy for the deadly cold. Their passage shaped the environment, trampling snow, breaking branches, and returning nutrients to soil, creating open grasslands where forests might have grown. In many ways, they were gardeners of the Ice Age, shaping ecosystems as elephants shape African savannas. Where mammoths walked, life followed. Prairie grasses flourished, birds nested in exposed areas, rodents scurried through cleared ground, and predators tracked trails left by giants. Yet even giants face endings. Climate began to shift as Earth warmed, glaciers retreated, and vast tundras shrank. With warming came rising seas, flooding coastlines, drowning lowlands, and reducing mammoth territory. New forests encroached, replacing grasslands with thick vegetation unsuited for mammoth feeding. Competition grew, resources thinned. The world they were built for, bitter winds, snow plains, frozen soil, faded. At the same time, another force emerged, not as physically powerful but deeply intelligent, coordinated, and resourceful. Early humans spread across continents carrying tools, fire, strategy, and ambition. Many hunted mammoths for survival, using bones for shelters, tusks for carving, hides for warmth. Their relationship was not simple predator and prey. It was necessity and ingenuity. For thousands of years, humans relied on mammoths as a cornerstone of survival in hostile climates. Hunting mammoths required cooperation, planning, courage, and reverence. Hunters observed migration paths, wind direction, herd behavior, and family structure. They aimed to isolate a weak or old mammoth, rarely targeting calves or strong adults unless desperate. Spears tipped with sharpened stone, fire used to guide movement, and coordinated attacks allowed small groups of humans to challenge giants. And with each hunt came respect. Images of mammoths carved into cave walls, etched into ivory, painted with pigments mixed from earth and ash. These artworks show admiration, fear, understanding, proof mammoths lived not only on land but in the minds and culture of early humanity. As climate warmed further, the mammoths' world fragmented. Populations dwindled until only isolated groups survived. Some found refuge on remote Arctic islands, cut off by rising seas, where small communities of mammoths lived thousands of years after mainland brothers vanished. On Wrangel Island, tiny mammoths, dwarfed through evolution, survived until around 4,000 years ago, long after pyramids rose in Egypt. These last survivors walked windswept beaches, drank from icy rivers and grazed shrinking grasslands, unaware they were the final chapter of a lineage stretching millions of years. Their end was quiet, not dramatic like a meteor strike, but slow, shaped by environmental strain, genetic bottleneck, and the delicate balance of nature tipping against them. No creature mourned them, yet Earth itself felt the absence of its woolen architects. Today, remains lie frozen beneath Siberian ice, entire bodies preserved with muscle, skin, fur, and even stomach contents intact. Scientists study these relics to decode their biology, behavior, and disease. We learn how they lived, how they died, and how they adapted. Advancements in genetics push further. Some now ask whether mammoths might walk again. Laboratories work with ancient DNA, comparing mammoth genomes with those of Asian elephants, their closest living relatives. Efforts do not seek resurrection for spectacle, but ecological restoration, re-establishing grazing giants in northern tundra to revive grasslands, reduce carbon release from melting permafrost, and help stabilize climate systems. Whether successful or not, the ambition speaks to humanity's fascination and responsibility to understand, preserve, and perhaps mend what was lost. What makes mammoths unforgettable is not just their size, but their spirit. They were social architects, memory carriers, gentle giants capable of affection and fury, whose footsteps shaped continents. Their extinction teaches the fragility of ecosystems and the power of environmental change. A warning that even the mightiest fall when nature shifts faster than adaptation can respond. And yet their story echoes in every elephant trunk raised to scent the wind, in every matriarch guiding a herd, in every calf sheltered by towering bodies. They live on not as ghosts but as lineage, legacy, and lesson. Picture the last mammoth standing on an Arctic shore, wind sweeping over snow-glazed rocks, ocean waves frozen at their edges, sky burning gold in a polar dawn. Its breath clouds the air, ears twitching, tusks heavy with time. No herd calls back. No footprints join its trail. But in its loneliness it carries history, the final heartbeat of a dynasty that once shook the world. And when it falls, Earth pauses, the wind whispering memory, ice closing like a book, and another age begins. The mammoth story is not simply a tale of extinction. It is a reminder that power lies not only in strength but in family, memory, adaptation, and balance with nature. Their frozen bones are not graves. They are messages across time. When we study them, honor them, and learn from them, we ensure that the world they shaped continues to breathe through knowledge, compassion, and curiosity. Their era has passed, but their echo remains in every whispering tundra wind, and in our enduring desire to understand life, protect the planet, and remember giants who once walked beside us.